Welcome to Larry the Alchemist. And on today's episode, I had a thought that's been going through my head. I just saw Wasp with Armored Saint opening up. And as I was watching Armored Saint, I was asking myself, why isn't Armored Saint more popular? They're a band. When I saw Wasp, we were in a venue that I'm going to say maybe held like 3,000 people. If Armored Saint was playing by themselves, there's no way they could play in a venue that size. They could maybe play in a place that holds 800, like a large club type of thing. So it got me thinking, why isn't Armored Saint, why weren't they more popular? And why are there certain bands that aren't more popular? Now, sometimes it's an easy explanation, right? The band is terrible. And I'm not talking about some obscure band that released one horrible record and it just disappeared. That's not the case with Armored Saint. They're all great players. John Bush is an amazing, amazing singer. I mean, if somebody said to me, John Bush is my favorite singer, I like him better than Bruce Dickinson and Ronnie James Dio, I would disagree, but I could see where they were coming from. So they had the vocals, they had the musicianship. There's nothing particularly wrong about the production or anything like that. And it just sort of got me scratching my head. So I made this list. Some of this I think applies to them and some of it doesn't apply to them. And I'm going to use Wasp as a reference too, because again, you're sort of similar bands in some ways, different in others, but they're from the same time period. You know, it wouldn't be fair to compare some band from the 90s to some band from the 80s, because it's just a totally different era. The 80s was, you know, the era of heavy metal and everything. All right, so number one for me, the first two things I'm going to say are timing and location. So for Armored Saint, their EP comes out in 83, and their first full-length, March of the Saint, comes out in 84. And they're from LA. By 83, Motley Crue is out, Too Fast for Love is out, Metal Health is out. LA is very much full speed ahead into the glam, Rat, Dawkins, Motley, Quiet Riot, all that kind of stuff is starting to, it's exploding. And Armored Saint doesn't have that sound. They don't have that glam sound. They're more of a traditional kind of straight up metal sound. They're more British Steel than they are Too Fast for Love or Out of the Cellar. And so I think their timing was a little bad. If they had come out in 80, 81, 82 before the glam thing exploded, it might have been different for them. If they were from Britain, it might have been different for them. I think they would have fit more into that sort of, say they had come around in 79, 80, they still could have been part of the new wave of British heavy metal. They would have slotted right in with that real nicely. Now you may say, well, Wasp isn't, I never really considered Wasp to be a glam band, but Wasp had that look, even though I don't really consider it to be a glam look. It was closer to the glam scene than Armored Saint's look, which was very denim and leather, traditional metal kind of look. So because of Wasp's look, they were sort of able to get in on the heavier side of glam, in fact, the much heavier side of glam. Okay, number three, and I don't really think that this applies. I would say this doesn't apply to Armored Saint, but some bands get held back because I think they have a confusing look or image or band name. When it comes to names, I think of, I don't know, maybe this band is popular, but the Eagles of Death Metal, right? I don't even know anything about that band, but I know they're not a death metal band, and that's a confusing band name. Some bands have a confusing look. I've talked about the glam thing dragging some bands down, some bands adopting that look when that really wasn't their sound. Cinderella, you hear me talk about Cinderella, that they have more to do with Aerosmith than they do with Sweet or Mark Bolan, T-Rex. Winger's another band. Great musicians, almost like, you know, progressive rock, progressive metal at times in some of their stuff. And they got lumped in with the glam hair thing because of their look and their hairstyle and everything like that. I would also put into this the outrageous thing, the outrage factor, okay? Now, this is where Wasp has that. That was a big thing for Wasp, the outrage thing, throwing meat, the buzzsaw crotch thing, being on the PMRC list. All that stuff gets you publicity gets you radio play, gets you on MTV, gets people talking about you. Armored Saint never had that. They never had any sort of outrageous controversy or anything sort of surrounding them like that. And you could say that's a good thing, but when it comes to publicity and stuff like that, that's a big part of Wasp's thing, that they were like at the forefront of the whole like PMRC outrage, F like a beast and all that kind of stuff. Outrageous lyrics, Blackie's outrageous, his look is crazy, the buzzsaw, all that kind of stuff that they did. Okay, number 4 is, and I do think that this applies to Armored Saint, is I titled it That Song. They do not have, okay, if you took, for instance, a bunch of people, now we're all diehards. We've got hundreds and thousands of CDs and vinyl, and we read the books. We go watch YouTube videos on this. We study this. We know this. We research it. We think about it. There's a lot of people that were teenagers in the 80s that were just casual fans. They listened to what was on the radio. They watched what was on MTV. So they know Rat, Round and Round. They know We're Not Gonna Take It. Wasp has that with like I Want to Be Somebody, for instance. But Armored Saint never really quite had that one song. They never had, for instance, like a Balls to the Wall or a Rock and Roll Crazy Nights, Loudness, right? You take those casual fans from the 80s and you say, hey, do you know Accept? And they might go, I'm not sure. Balls to the Wall. Oh, yeah, I remember that. The video with the guy on the wrecking ball. Yeah. Okay, because that video got played like crazy. Same thing with Rock and Roll Crazy Nights. There's a lot of people that only know that song for that band. And Armored Saint never had that. I mean, Can You Deliver? A little bit. I guess that's their most popular song, March of the Saint, maybe. But it never crossed over into that video category where it was getting played like crazy on MTV, or it got played on radio or anything like that. So they never really had that song. I would say Wasp did with like I Want to Be Somebody, Blind in Texas. Wasp had a couple songs like that that sort of crossed over into that even casual fans would recognize. All right, and number 5, I would just say, for this one I just said, actually wait, I'm going to go to management and label support. Now, I don't know anything about Armored Saint's management, and they seem like they had decent label. They were on Metal Blade and everything like that. But this is something that a lot of bands fall victim to. They have bad management. They switch labels. The labels aren't supporting them. The label wants them to change their look or their sound. I'm thinking of like Raven and Saxon in like the mid 80s. This is kind of common when the band doesn't have a big album. The label starts pressuring them to change their sound. Maybe they record a cover song. Maybe they soften it up a little bit. They try to get more radio friendly. And a lot of times it doesn't work, and it just does more damage to the band than good. I can't really say that's the case with Armored Saint. I think that they were on Chrysalis. So they weren't, they started off on Metal Blade, moved to Chrysalis. So they were definitely on a bigger label, so that doesn't apply to them. All right, but my last point, number 6, and I just wrote this one as songs in general. Now, again, I like Armored Saint, but during the show, my wife sort of leaned over to me, and she's not really a fan of, like, my wife is more into extreme metal. She likes Wasp, but she likes stuff like, Gothenburg death metal and stuff like that, right? So she's not super familiar with Armored Saint, and she leans over to me and she says, their songs are good, but they're just not quite there. They're not great songs. And I have to agree with her to a certain extent. They have some stuff that's really good, but they sort of lack that next level songwriting like that Iron Maiden has or that Judas Priest has, that super catchy, big choruses, big hooks and stuff like that. And again, they have a lot of stuff that I like, but I honestly can't put them on the level of Judas Priest or Iron Maiden or Black Sabbath or classic Ozzy or Dio or Kiss and bands like that have really big anthemic songs with great sort of songwriting, great hooks, great riffs, and stuff like that. They have that to a certain extent, but it's not enough maybe to sort of push them into that next level. So, and whereas I would say that Wasp has that. Wasp has a lot of catchy songs. You know, their whole show, my wife was kind of like, wow, I'm surprised how many of these Wasp songs that I remember and recognize. And it's true. They have a lot of songs. They have a lot of really catchy songs. Blackie Lawless is a really, really great songwriter. And I think that that's what helped sort of push Wasp into a level above Armored Saint, if you will. And when you factor all these things in, the look, the outrage, the songs, the timing, and everything like that, it puts Wasp in a different category. It puts Wasp as the headliner and Armored Saint as the opening band. So again, don't want to sound like I'm dumping on Armored Saint, because I really think that they should be more popular than they are. It's just when I sit back and kind of think about it logically, these are some of the reasons that I come up with. And like I said, it could apply to a lot of bands. So let me know what you think of this thought here. What are some bands that for you should have been more popular, but weren't? You feel like they should have been more popular, and maybe suffered victim to one or more of these things: timing, place, bad management, confusing name, confusing look, not having that song. You know, maybe one or more of these apply to that band. Let me know in the comments down below a band that you think that this also applies to. Let me know what you think about Armored Saint and Wasp. Let me know down below. Till we see you again, make sure you stay heavy, stay metal.